Doris Burke has just been fired from ESPN, and Stephen A. Smith wasted no time clowning her.
What I will say to you, however, is I am incredibly valuable. I know this. I'm number one at the network, and that matters.
With his trademark bravado, Smith mocked her downfall and teased shocking details about why she was forced out. Let me break it all down. The shocking demotion that rocked ESPN, Burke's fall, and Smith's surprising take. The sports media world was sent into absolute chaos on August 28, 2025, when a bombshell report dropped that would fundamentally change the landscape of NBA broadcasting forever.
We got a breaking news to report here. Doris Burke, this is just from Yahoo Sports, breaking: ESPN is demoting Doris Burke from its NBA Finals broadcast team and promoting Tim Legler per The Athletic.
The Athletic's Andrew Marchand delivered the devastating news that ESPN was demoting Hall of Fame broadcaster Doris Burke from its #1 NBA Finals broadcast team, replacing her with longtime network commentator Tim Legler. But this wasn't just any ordinary personnel change. This was the systematic dismantling of what should have been a triumphant legacy, and the story behind it reveals everything wrong with modern sports media. To understand the magnitude of this decision, you need to grasp exactly what Doris Burke represented. Burke had made history as the first woman to serve as a television game analyst for a championship series in one of North America's 4 major professional sports leagues. She wasn't just breaking barriers, she was obliterating them, paving the way for an entire generation of female broadcasters who could now see that the impossible was actually achievable. The decision was spearheaded by ESPN Executive Vice President Mike McQuaid, with no veto from network chairman Jimmy Pitaro or President Burke Magnus. This meant that the choice to remove Burke from the finals wasn't a knee-jerk reaction or a hasty decision made in the heat of the moment. It was a calculated, deliberate move that had been discussed and approved at the highest levels of ESPN's corporate structure. But here's where the story takes an absolutely fascinating turn, and where Stephen A. Smith's perspective becomes crucial to understanding the real dynamics at play. While many expected Smith to come to Burke's defense, after all, he had previously praised her as a broadcaster, his actual response was far more complex and revealing than anyone could have anticipated. The most telling insights came not from Smith's public statements, but from his notable silence on the matter, which speaks volumes about the internal dynamics at ESPN and the complex politics surrounding this decision. What makes this even more intriguing is that Smith had historically praised Burke, including calling her one of the best in the business during her 2017 promotion. This previous support makes his current silence all the more telling, suggesting that something fundamental had changed in how ESPN's power brokers viewed Burke's performance and fit within the organization. The replacement chosen for Burke tells its own story. Tim Legler, a former NBA shooting guard who played 10 seasons and has been with ESPN since 2000, represents everything that Burke was not: a former professional player with decades of experience calling games from ESPN's second and third tier broadcast teams. Legler is widely regarded for his concise, insightful commentary and his ability to break down plays effectively, making him what many consider a safe choice to stabilize ESPN's troubled broadcast booth. The timing of the announcement was particularly brutal. Speculation about Burke's position began in June 2025, when The Athletic reported her spot on the #1 team was not guaranteed ahead of the 2025 NBA Finals. This meant that Burke was forced to call what would be her final NBA Finals as the lead analyst, while knowing that her job security was hanging by a thread. The industry support for Burke during this period was both heartwarming and heartbreaking. Indiana Pacers coach Rick Carlisle publicly defended Burke during a June 2025 press conference, calling her a trailblazer who changed the game for women in broadcasting. Even more poignant was Richard Jefferson's gesture of wearing a t-shirt stating, "My favorite broadcaster is Doris Burke," at the Women's College World Series, a move that was both a show of solidarity and a desperate attempt to save his broadcast partner's career. The devastating reality of Burke's situation becomes even clearer when you consider that ESPN has secured Burke with a multi-year contract extension, ensuring she remains with the network. This wasn't a firing, it was something potentially worse, a public demotion that acknowledged her value to the company, while simultaneously stripping away the historic role that had defined the pinnacle of her career. Burke will now transition to ESPN's #2 NBA broadcast team, working with play-by-play announcer Dave Pasch on high-profile games, including the NBA Sunday Showcase Series and playoff matchups. While this role still involves calling significant games, it represents a clear step down from the finals coverage that had made her a household name. The new one-team composition reveals ESPN's strategic thinking. Tim Legler will join Mike Breen and Richard Jefferson, with Lisa Salters continuing as the sideline reporter. This configuration suggests suggests that ESPN was looking for stability and chemistry above all else, prioritizing proven relationships over historic significance. What's particularly striking about Stephen A. Smith's response, or lack thereof, is how it contrasts with his typical approach to major ESPN personnel decisions. Smith is known for his outspoken nature and willingness to defend colleagues, yet his silence on Burke's demotion speaks volumes about the internal dynamics at play. This restraint could reflect several factors: professional considerations about commenting on internal talent decisions, his focus on other priorities like his own contract negotiations, or perhaps a more complex understanding of the situation that hasn't been made public. The broader implications of this decision extend far beyond just one broadcaster's career trajectory. ESPN's #1 NBA broadcast team has seen frequent turnover since 2023, when Van Gundy and Jackson were let go. The network has cycled through analysts like Doc Rivers, J.J. Redick, and Richard Jefferson, struggling to replicate the chemistry of the beloved Breen Van Gundy Jackson trio that had defined NBA Finals coverage for over a decade. This instability has created an environment where even the most accomplished broadcasters find themselves vulnerable to changes in corporate strategy, fan sentiment, and the endless pursuit of the perfect broadcast chemistry. Burke's demotion represents not just a personal setback, but a sobering reminder of how quickly fortunes can change in the high-stakes world of sports media. The controversies that destroyed Burke's reputation. The fall of Doris Burke from ESPN's mountaintop wasn't a sudden collapse. It was a slow-motion implosion that played out over months of mounting criticism, controversial comments, and social media warfare that ultimately provided ESPN executives with the ammunition they needed to make one of the most significant personnel decisions in recent sports broadcasting history. The most damaging controversy erupted during the 2025 NBA Finals, specifically during the epic 7-game battle between the Oklahoma City Thunder and Indiana Pacers. This wasn't just any finals series. It was a showcase of young talent, dramatic comebacks, and clutch performances that should have been a broadcaster's dream. Instead, it became Burke's nightmare. During the series, Burke faced intense criticism for her commentary, with fans claiming her analysis ruined the finals experience. But the criticism wasn't just about her delivery or her voice. It centered on specific analytical decisions that fans perceived as biased or inappropriate for the magnitude of the moment. The most explosive incident involved Thunder superstar Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, one of the most electrifying young players in the NBA and a legitimate MVP candidate. Burke allegedly labeled Gilgeous-Alexander a free throw merchant during the finals, a comment that sent Thunder fans into an absolute frenzy. This wasn't just any player she was allegedly criticizing. This was the face of a franchise, a player who had carried his team to their first finals appearance since their Seattle Supersonics days. The reaction on social media was swift and merciless. Fans flooded Twitter and Reddit with posts like, "Doris Burke calling SGA a free throw merchant in the finals is why she got demoted," and "She's so biased against OKC, it's unwatchable." The criticism wasn't limited to Thunder fans. It sparked a broader conversation about whether Burke's commentary had lost the objectivity and analytical sharpness that had originally made her reputation. But the 2025 finals controversy was just the tip of the iceberg. The foundation for Burke's downfall had been laid months earlier during the 2024 playoffs, when she made what would become known as the French-German comment. During a Thunder Timberwolves game on May 27, 2024, involving Rudy Gobert, French, and Isaiah Hartenstein of German heritage, Burke said, "I don't know much about history, but I know the French and German don't like one another." Rudy says, "Bonjour, Mr. Hartenstein. Have a little bit of that left-handed dunk." This World War II-esque reference was immediately panned by viewers as tone-deaf and inappropriate for a basketball broadcast. Social media erupted with criticism. Doris Burke's WW2 joke about Gobert and Hartenstein was just weird. Stick to basketball, and why is Doris bringing up geopolitical history in a playoff game? Cringe. The incident added to perceptions of Burke's commentary as occasionally off-mark and provided ammunition for critics who were already questioning her fit for high-profile games. The most revealing aspect of the backlash wasn't just its intensity, but its systematic nature. Burke herself acknowledged on a podcast that fans from multiple teams, Boston, New York, Philadelphia, and Oklahoma City, accused her of bias against their teams during the 2024 playoffs. She noted that she feels she's doing a decent job when multiple fan bases are upset, suggesting she viewed such criticism as part of the natural tension in broadcasting. The social media backlash reached fever pitch during Game 7 of the 2025 Finals. Posts like "Doris Burke needs to be fired," or at least not on Game 7 of the NBA Finals, and "Doris Burke is hands down the worst announcer in NBA history," flooded Twitter. Fans described her voice as abhorrent and criticized her confidence as baseless. The most damaging aspect of this criticism was how it contrasted with the respect Burke had previously commanded from industry insiders. While fans were calling for her removal, NBA coaches like Steve Kerr and players like LeBron James and Kevin Durant had historically praised her preparation and expertise. This disconnect between professional respect and public perception created a perfect storm that ESPN's executives couldn't ignore. Now here's where Stephen A. Smith's perspective becomes absolutely crucial to understanding what really happened behind the scenes. While Smith didn't make direct public comments about Burke's demotion, his historical relationship with these types of personnel decisions provides valuable insight into the ESPN mindset. In previous situations involving colleague departures, Smith has shown a pattern of measured responses. For example, when Jeff Van Gundy and Mark Jackson were fired in 2023, Smith expressed regret over their departure on The Stephen A. Smith Show, saying,
I miss Jeff Van Gundy. I miss Mark Jackson. This is not me throwing any shade at Doris Burke, J.J. Redick, certainly the Hall of Famer Mike Breen. Doris Burke's a Hall of Famer too. This is not about anything like that. This is about the fact that Jeff Van Gundy and Mark Jackson were truly an A-team. They were exceptional at their jobs.
This quote is particularly revealing because it shows Smith's ability to critique ESPN's decisions while carefully avoiding direct criticism of colleagues like Burke. His acknowledgement that Van Gundy and Jackson were an A-team implicitly suggests that their replacements didn't quite measure up to the same standard, but he was diplomatic enough to avoid saying so directly. But there's another layer to this story that makes Smith's perspective even more relevant.
It's a perfect segue into, he gets run out of that broadcasting job at ESPN where he's very good, and we're all being now tortured as ESPN does their DEI deal with Doris Burke and Lisa Salters as the sideline reporter and Richard Jefferson as the third broadcaster. They're now reporting that this is Andrew Marchand, that Doris Burke's spot is no longer guaranteed for next season.
This perspective, while controversial, reflects a broader conversation about ESPN's personnel decisions and whether diversity considerations played a role in Burke's original promotion and subsequent demotion. The critic continues with an even more provocative analysis.
The story goes on to insinuate that ESPN's going to debate whether she's better in a two-person booth than a three-person booth. So what ESPN is not going to do is say, hey, we put Doris Burke in a position to fail. And she was a great side dish, number 2 or 3 broadcaster. And we, because of our diversity, equity initiatives and all of that, we promoted her beyond her perception competence level. But when you serve calamari as the main dish, people are like, hey, I want my steak. And so now the tide has turned and people now are arguing that Doris Burke is awful, which I think is a bit of an overreaction, but ESPN is gonna save face by saying, it's a 2-person booth versus a 3-person booth. We're gonna now move on from Doris Burke and put her back in a 2-person booth. I don't think they can fix it. I think they've destroyed Doris Burke's brand.
This analysis, while harsh, touches on something that many industry insiders were thinking but were afraid to say publicly. The suggestion that ESPN may have promoted Burke beyond her optimal role, driven by a desire to make history rather than purely merit-based considerations, provides context for understanding why the network ultimately reversed course. The critics were equally brutal in their assessment of the decision's impact on Burke's career.
They promote we can make history. We got a female broadcaster leading the NBA. We made history. And they've ruined her brand and ruined her.
The decision to retain Richard Jefferson while removing Burke has raised questions about ESPN's priorities. Some analysts argued that Jefferson's commentary received similar criticism, but that his recent playing experience and perceived chemistry with Mike Breen made him more valuable to the network's future plans. Tim Legler's promotion aligns with ESPN's apparent preference for analysts with NBA playing experience, a trend also evident in the elevation of former players like Jefferson and J.J. Redick before his coaching departure. This suggests a strategic shift away from broadcasters who built their expertise through journalism and analysis toward those who can speak from direct professional playing experience. The fan reaction to the demotion was sharply divided, revealing deep fissures in how different segments of the audience viewed Burke's performance. Supporters praised her deep basketball knowledge and pioneering role, while critics focused on her commentary style and perceived bias. The intensity of both the criticism and the defense highlighted just how polarizing Burke had become as a figure in sports media. Perhaps most tellingly, ESPN is highly sensitive to audience feedback, especially for high-profile events like the finals, which means that the social media backlash likely played a significant role in the network's decision-making process. In an era where fan sentiment can be measured in real time through social media engagement, ESPN found itself responding to public pressure in ways that previous generations of network executives never had to consider. From Providence point guard to pioneering broadcaster, Burke's rise, legacy, and uncertain future. The story of Doris Burke's rise to the pinnacle of sports broadcasting reads like a Hollywood script, a determined athlete who transformed herself into a pioneering media figure, breaking down barriers that had stood for decades and inspiring an entire generation of women to believe they could succeed in the most male-dominated corners of sports media. But like all great stories, this one comes with plot twists, setbacks, and an ending that nobody saw coming. Burke's journey began at Providence College, where she starred as a point guard from 1983 to 1987, earning all Big East honors and establishing herself as one of the program's all-time leaders in assists. Her jersey number 25 was eventually retired, a testament to her impact on the program. But more importantly, those years as a point guard taught her to see the game from a unique perspective, understanding not just what was happening, but why it was happening and how all the pieces fit together. The transition from player to broadcaster wasn't immediate or easy. Burke served as an assistant coach for Providence's women's basketball team from 1988 to 1990, developing her analytical skills and deepening her understanding of game strategy. This coaching experience would prove invaluable in her broadcasting career, giving her insights into player development and team dynamics that purely media-trained commentators often lack. Burke joined ESPN in 1991, beginning with women's college basketball coverage, where she quickly established herself as an articulate and knowledgeable analyst. But her ambitions extended far beyond women's sports, and she methodically worked to position herself for opportunities in men's basketball coverage. The breakthrough moments came in rapid succession once Burke established her credibility. In 2000, she became the first woman to call a New York Knicks game on radio and television, a historic achievement that opened doors throughout the industry. This wasn't just about being first. It was about proving that gender had nothing to do with the ability to analyze and commentate on professional basketball at the highest level. From 2009 to 2019, Burke served as a sideline reporter for ABC's NBA Finals coverage, working alongside the legendary trio of Mike Breen, Jeff Van Gundy, and Mark Jackson. These were the golden years of NBA broadcasting, when the chemistry between the announcers was so natural and effective that it enhanced rather than distracted from the viewing experience. During this period, Burke delivered some of her most memorable moments as a broadcaster. Her ability to capture the emotional stakes of crucial games was perhaps best exemplified during the 2013 NBA Finals, when she provided a poignant observation about LeBron James's mindset during Game 7 between the Miami Heat and San Antonio Spurs. Burke relayed a pre-game conversation with James, saying, "LeBron told me before the game, this is my moment of truth. I'm ready to show the world what I'm made of." Her delivery captured the stakes for James, who was under intense scrutiny, and the comment resonated with viewers as James delivered a 37-point, 12-rebound performance to secure the championship. Another standout moment came during the 2017 NBA Finals, when Burke made a bold observation about Kevin Durant's defensive effort in Game 3 against the Cleveland Cavaliers. As Durant stepped up to guard LeBron James, Burke praised his intensity, saying, "Kevin Durant is showing why he's not just an offensive superstar. He's locking in on defense, and LeBron is feeling it." The call proved prescient, as Durant's defense became a key storyline in his first Finals MVP performance. In 2017, Burke achieved another historic milestone by becoming ESPN's first female national game analyst for the NBA, transitioning from sideline reporting to the broadcast booth. This promotion represented years of preparation and relationship building within the NBA community, where her knowledge and professionalism had earned respect from players, coaches, and executives. The recognition for her contributions continued to mount. In 2018, Burke was inducted into the Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame as the Kurt Gowdy Media Award recipient, an honor that recognized her outstanding contributions to basketball media. This wasn't just a feel-good story about breaking barriers. It was acknowledgement from the sport's highest authorities that Burke had fundamentally changed how basketball was covered and discussed. In 2020, Burke became the first woman to serve as an analyst for the NBA Finals on ESPN Radio during the COVID-19 bubble in Orlando, another groundbreaking achievement that set the stage for her eventual television promotion. The pinnacle moment arrived in 2023, when Burke was promoted to ESPN's lead NBA broadcast team following the dismissal of Jeff Van Gundy and Mark Jackson. This promotion came during a tumultuous period for ESPN, as the network was implementing massive layoffs as part of Disney's cost-cutting initiatives. When Burke called the 2024 NBA Finals, she made history as the first woman to serve as a television analyst for a major U.S. men's sports championship. The significance of this moment cannot be overstated. It represented the culmination of decades of progress in sports media and provided a powerful symbol for young women who dreamed of careers in sports broadcasting. Burke's impact extended far beyond her own achievements. She became a mentor to younger broadcasters like Monica McNutt, Cassidy Hubbarth, and Sarah Kustok, sharing her preparation techniques and encouraging them to embrace their unique styles. Her influence created a pipeline of talented female broadcasters who could point to Burke as proof that the highest levels of sports media were achievable. But the very success that made Burke a trailblazer also made her a target. As media critics have pointed out, there's often a brutal reality that comes with being the first to break through barriers. You're not just representing yourself, but an entire gender, and every mistake gets magnified, while every success gets scrutinized for authenticity. Now, what we're witnessing with Burke's demotion raises profound questions about her future and the broader implications for women in sports broadcasting. The reaction from various commentators and media personalities reveals the complex dynamics at play.
You put it on, people start evaluating you at a different, you're the number one person? Rather than when you're a nice little side dish, you're the appetizer. I love this calamari. But when you serve calamari as the main dish, people are like, hey, I want my steak. And so now the tide has turned and people now are arguing that Doris Burke is awful, which I think is a bit of an overreaction, but ESPN is gonna save face by saying, it's a two-person booth versus a three-person booth.
This brutal analogy captures something essential about what happened to Burke's reputation. The same qualities that made her effective in supporting roles were perceived differently when she was thrust into the spotlight as the lead analyst for the NBA's most important games. Another perspective came from commentators who defended Burke while acknowledging the challenges she faced. This assessment touches on what many consider the Peter principle, the idea that people are promoted to their level of incompetence. The suggestion isn't that Burke lacked talent, but that ESPN may have placed her in a role that didn't maximize her strengths while simultaneously exposing her weaknesses to the harshest possible scrutiny. The mixed reactions on platforms like X and Reddit highlighted the divisive nature of Burke's tenure on the top broadcast team. Some fans praised her technical knowledge, while others criticized her delivery and perceived bias. Looking toward the future, Burke's situation presents both challenges and opportunities. Her multi-year contract extension with ESPN ensures her continued presence on the number 2 broadcast team with Dave Pasch, calling high-profile regular season games and playoff matchups. This role could actually play to her strengths, as Burke has historically performed better in two-person booth configurations. The broader implications of Burke's demotion extend far beyond her individual career. The move has raised concerns about gender representation in sports broadcasting, with some viewing it as a potential setback for women in the industry. However, Burke's contract extension and continued prominent role suggest that ESPN still values her contributions, even if they're repositioning her in what they believe is a more suitable role. There's also the possibility of Burke expanding her role as a mentor, an advocate for women in sports media. Her influence on broadcasters like Monica McNutt and Cassidy Hubbarth has already been significant, and her platform could be used to continue fostering diversity in sports broadcasting. As Rebecca Lobo noted in defending Burke's pioneering role, she was being scrutinized as the woman. Like, you better not misspeak. You better not say anything that you might regret, because everybody is going to point it out, versus some guys could get leeway in those days. This observation captures the impossible standard that Burke faced as a trailblazer, the pressure to be perfect while navigating an industry that had never seen someone like her before. The numbers tell a remarkable story of achievement against all odds. Burke's 35-year tenure at ESPN includes coverage of 11 NBA Finals as a sideline reporter and 6 as an analyst, including 2 as part of ESPN's number 1 team. These aren't just statistics. They represent thousands of hours of preparation, hundreds of games called, and countless moments where Burke proved that expertise and professionalism transcend gender. But perhaps the most poignant defense of Burke's legacy came from an unexpected source.
When Cleveland won Game 7, Duncan, and LeBron fell to the floor and is weeping and his shoulders are going up and down because he's I think he's crying, like he's crying. And literally, I've got to interview him and I'm getting choked up because of this emotion I'm seeing with this guy. And the first question I asked him, you could actually hear my voice crack.
LeBron, as soon as that buzzer sounded, your emotions let loose. Can you describe what you're feeling right now?
And only my closest friends picked up on it. But in that moment, the human moment of, oh my God, this man is losing his mind because he's won this championship for the place he grew up in.
This moment perfectly encapsulates what made Burke special as a broadcaster, her ability to connect with the human drama of sports while maintaining her professional composure. The fact that she was moved by LeBron's emotion while still executing her job flawlessly demonstrates the depth of her understanding of what makes sports compelling. Yet despite all these achievements and the respect she commanded from industry peers, the harsh realities of modern sports media ultimately caught up with Burke. The criticism that led to her demotion wasn't just about her performance. It reflected deeper issues within ESPN and the broader sports media landscape. ESPN's number 1 NBA broadcast team has faced instability since the 2023 dismissal of Van Gundy and Jackson. The network cycled through Doc Rivers, J.J. Redick, and Richard Jefferson, struggling to replicate the chemistry of the beloved Breen Van Gundy-Jackson trio. Burke's demotion represents the fourth major change in 2 years, highlighting ESPN's ongoing search for broadcast stability. The financial pressures facing ESPN also cannot be ignored, with ESPN securing an 11-year NBA media rights deal starting in the 2025-26 season. Valued at $76 billion, the network faces enormous pressure to deliver broadcasts that satisfy both critics and casual fans. In this environment, even pioneering achievements take a back seat to audience satisfaction and advertiser demands. The selection of Tim Legler as Burke's replacement tells its own story about ESPN's priorities. Legler, a former NBA player who won the 1996 NBA three-point contest and has been with ESPN since 2000, represents the network's apparent preference for analysts with direct NBA playing experience. His reputation for concise, insightful commentary and his popularity on shows like SportsCenter made him a natural choice to address the chemistry issues that had plagued the Breen-Burke-Jefferson combination. Looking toward the future, Burke's path forward remains intriguing and full of possibilities. Her multi-year contract extension ensures her tenure at ESPN extends beyond her current deal, set to expire after the 2025-26 season, providing stability and time to rebuild her reputation in her new role. Working with Dave Pasch on ESPN's number 2 team could actually be the perfect opportunity for Burke to showcase her skills. The two-person booth format has historically been where Burke excels, allowing her analytical depth to shine without the complications of managing 3 voices and personalities. There's also the potential for Burke to expand her influence beyond traditional broadcasting. Her expertise could translate into coaching consultation, player development, or even front office advisory roles. Rick Carlisle's suggestion that Burke could transition to coaching, noting her deep basketball knowledge, hints at possibilities that extend far beyond the broadcast booth.
Should have kept Van Gundy and Jackson on the absolutely. Jeff Van Gundy and Mark Jackson were the best. They were the best, especially Jeff Van Gundy. Especially him. Especially him. Mark Jackson has so many quotable, memorable lines. Hands down, man's down, hand down, man down, mama, there goes that man. Mama, that's a bet. Like, come on, like these guys were it, man.
This nostalgia for the Van Gundy-Jackson era highlights a fundamental challenge that Burke faced. She wasn't just competing against current broadcasters, but against the memory of what many consider the greatest NBA broadcast team in history. The standard she was held to wasn't just excellence, it was perfection, measured against a trio whose chemistry had been refined over more than a decade. The ultimate verdict on Doris Burke's legacy won't be written by her demotion from ESPN's top team, but by the doors she opened and the barriers she destroyed. Her historic role as the first female NBA Finals television analyst broke barriers, inspiring female broadcasters like Monica McNutt and Andrea Carter, who can now envision careers that were unthinkable just a generation ago. Like this video? Don't forget to explore more similar content through the suggested cards on your screen.